And yeah, a lot of the time people put off doing this because they find mindful work a little bit wet, a little bit wanky, a little bit hippie, but it doesn't have to be that way. When we start to look at the science of it, or like I kind of said there, it starts to make sense. It can completely change your life. And that sounds very dramatic, but I really do believe that's the case.
Hello and welcome to another YouTube. So this is going to be part of the four-part kind of like series. You've got to excuse the background because we are meant to be moving house. We are just kind of waiting for the date from the solicitors, but I won't go too much kind of into that. So it could be any time now, hopefully, fingers crossed. But it does mean we have started boxing things kind of up, and rather than trying to find the perfect kind of background and put myself off being consistent with these YouTubes, because that's one of the things that I've been trying to do this year. Is I thought, do you know what, I'm just going to film it and then we'll see what happens. So last week we kind of talked about the away moves and towards moves, so it can be like a really useful tool to use when we kind of get ourselves hooked onto unhelpful kind of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And then usually what tends to happen is it kind of pulls us away from the things that are kind of important to us. So when we looked at ACT in general, we're not really worried whether the thought is kind of wrong or right, like we would be in CBT. We don't spend much time kind of arguing about that. But what we do is we ask ourselves, what we do. What we do is ask ourselves, is this thought helpful and is it moving me towards the person I want to be? So that's where that choice point can be useful. And if the answer is no, then that's where we want to start thinking about, okay, how do we diffuse this thought, or how do we unhook ourselves?
So back over to the whiteboard. So as I kind of said last week, this was that choice point. So when we have a tough decision, at every point we have this choice point here, whether we're going to ever, move towards the things that we want to do, or we're going to move kind of away. So the things in this kind of circumstance are things like skipping the gym, maybe falling into binge eating behaviors. It might be missing social events, not tracking, basically not doing the things that we said we were going to do. And this tends to be where a lot of people get frustrated because they're like, I'm really miserable and I'm happy in my own body. I know what I should be doing, but I just don't know why I'm not doing it. And as I kind of said here, this is where we tend to get hooked. And we're getting hooked onto the thoughts and the feelings. So the feelings here, anxiety, guilt, shame. And then you got thoughts. Things might be such as, I'm not good enough, I'm going to fail anyway. Some people do it when they're tracking. They might miss one day and they're just like, well, I've screwed it now. It's all over. I've missed one day. So what is the point? I'm going to start Monday. And then that spiral kind of continues. So as I kind of said earlier, the thoughts and the feelings aren't the problem. And the issues we have is we get taught, particularly sometimes from an early age, but, feelings like anxiety, guilt, sadness are things that we should just like snap out of. Like, snap out of it. Why are you feeling like that? Just get on with it. And what it does is it teaches us that these emotions are bad, and rather than actually learning to sit with them, we try to fight against them. And the problem is, if we think about that, like anytime you try and white knuckle a thought, so if you have a thought that's in your head, so let's say, the thought here, for example, I'm going to fail anyway. If we try to kind of like white knuckle foot through it, and let's say like use some CBT techniques, we're going, is it true? Is it not true? That type of thought process. But what tends to happen is our brains tends to fight against us. So we go, well, no, it's not true. You haven't failed. And then your brain will come back in and it will just be like, yeah, you do. You always do this. You always do it on repeat. And you end up with this kind of like internal battle. Rather than what we're trying to do with ACT is we start to see the thought like kind of like, a way of looking at it is like clouds passing by, or another analogy I like to use is a broken radio. So your brain's chirping away in the background and you have the choice of whether you're going to like listen to it or whether you're going to move towards, again, what is important. And this is where I like to use a framework that's called so a really good practice, I'm just going to get that to track me, there you go. A really good practice and something I use with a lot of clients when they first join is a thing called drop and anchor. So essentially, if we imagine that we are sailors on a ship, bear with me, and the waves or the weather is all the situations in life that we don't have control over. So it might be the thoughts, the feelings, or just things that kind of happen to us. So we can't stop these things, but what we can do is we can drop anchor, allow them to be there, and just ground ourselves a little bit. So again, as I kind of said before, what most people try to do is try and fight against it. They try to ignore it. But how often does that actually work? Usually, again, it just keeps you in this never-ending kind of cycle. So when we're kind of like talking about that, the first kind of phase is I like to use the ACE kind of framework. So the first phase here is acknowledge. So it is as simple as you can do this practice walking a dog, you can do it when you're driving your car and you're stuck at some traffic lights, or you can do it, sometimes just before you start work. And that first point of acknowledge is we're just going to acknowledge the thoughts and the feelings that are kind of coming up. So what thoughts am I noticing that are in my brain? And we're just going to note them. We're just going to go, right, I am noticing I am worrying about, an argument I had with my partner yesterday. Or it might be I'm noticing that I am worried about something that's happening at work. Or that I've eaten all of those Doritos last night and I'm a complete failure. And we're not trying to do anything with it. We're just doing that with curiosity, not judging it. We're just allowing that thought to be there. After we've done that, we might come into our body and start to think about, okay, how does my chest feel? Is that feeling a little bit tight? Are my shoulders feeling tight? Do I have maybe some butterflies in my stomach? So we're just really kind of like zoning in on what is happening. Next is to connect. So connect is anything you can do to connect with your body. So some real simple ones can be squeezing your hands. So can you squeeze your hands 5 times? Can you plant your feet on the floor and really feel the floor beneath you? Sometimes people like to do like a little stretch or something that they can kind of do. And all it is showing you is I can have all of these thoughts and feelings kind of going on, but I've still got control over my body. So it's taking you from your head back to your body. Right, I can control what is going on. When we talk about the final one in the engage section, and you might have heard some stuff like this before, so you can use the principles of, what are maybe 5 things that I can see, what things I can hear, what things I can smell, what things I can kind of like touch. But simply like, a shorter variation might be as simple as kind of like, just looking at the room around you, or if you're outside, what is kind of going on, and it's engaging in the present. And it could be as simple as, if you are watching TV, rather than doom scrolling on your phone or getting caught up in rumination, actually watch the program. If you're talking to your partner, actually talk to your partner. If you are out and about walking a dog, are you actually being present? So again, it is teaching us that skill of I can have this thought, I can come back to my body, but also I can engage with the world around me and bring myself back to the present. And again, it seems really, really simple, but the research has kind of shown that the more we practice skills like this, that prefrontal cortex, so the part of our brain that makes more logical decisions, actually increases in grey matter. So we actually get better at staying present. And when we look at the science, because I used to be probably exactly like you are now, where this stuff to me used to be a bit fluffy, a bit wet. And this is why I'm a massive fan of things like dropping anchor, because I think when people come across mindfulness practice in the past, they usually put off doing it, right? Because it sounds maybe a little bit wet or a little bit flaky, and they're just like, well, I'm not doing that. Whereas with this kind of practice, it is so simple. You can do it anywhere. You can literally do it in about 30 seconds, but it can be an absolute game changer when it comes to being hooked by our thoughts. So as soon as we realize that is what's happening, we can go through this process. And again, we start making decisions towards our goals rather than saying, I had no control or something took over me or I just couldn't stop eating. So again, make sure that you practice it. And then what I do is I put a little link below where you can download a little worksheet that kind of talks you through it as well. So let me know in the comments if you found it helpful. And what I will do next week is we'll move on to kind of like the next phase of this as well. So like I said, it's going to be a 4-part series all about how to stop self-sabotaging.